Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations again. I'm Kamaljeet here, and today we have Dr. Lakshmi Kannan, a well-known psychologist in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, BC. And for those who are here for the first time, I want to share a little bit about conversations as well. Conversations is a space to share and to listen to thoughts and experiences, promoting a conscious awareness of acceptance and care to recognize our presence here on planet Earth, and know that all life is treasured and loved. And we also must remember that we are all interconnected, and our responses and our emotions, whatever they may be, they do get transferred. So we all need to be very sensitive to all the people and their needs around us. So a little about Dr. Lakshmi Kannan. She is the founder and lead psychologist of Powerful Insights Psychologist. Her mission is to empower all minds with the power of time-tested and evidence-based psychological tools to transcend all limits and challenges and to live life every moment to the fullest. Her vision is to perpetuate a world where all human beings experience a state of inner peace and oneness with every atom and cell of the universe we live in, consciously and powerful, contributing to our shared joy and bliss. This is so important in life. She's a well-reputed registered psychologist in BC, based out of Vancouver. Her Ph.D. was in studying the effectiveness of various therapeutic strategies. She has written many articles and presented many papers, and can make that huge shift in a short time by putting together a holistic plan that is best suited for our clients and the current situation. She has an extensive leadership experience in diverse settings like the family court, multinational companies, trauma and crisis clinics, and personal growth centers across various countries, and has tremendous cultural and diversity competence. Her approach is calming and yet concrete, integrating wisdom with new age scientific approaches like EMDR, cognitive behavior therapies, stress management, and inoculation training, transpersonal psychotherapy, mindfulness, integrated therapies, and blends them in the right mix to empower you. She can make positive and conscious choices through powerful insights and decisive actions. So we have a few sessions planned with Dr. Lakshmi to share her experience and knowledge to inspire us all in our journey moving forward in this life on planet Earth. And, as per her motto, let's find a way or make one. So let's talk to Dr. Lakshmi Kannan. So hello, Priya. How are you doing today? Thank you for being here.
I am doing great, and it's a nice freezing day outside, but we are warm on the inside, right? So
Yeah.
it's wonderful to connect with you, Kamal, and I really appreciate the work you're doing with conversations.
Yes, it is a great learning for everyone. Whether we feel that we are comfortable, sometimes suddenly something happens in our life and we are shaken up. It could be related to us, our personal self, or our family, or somebody whom we know, closely. So it does impact us, and that anxiety can take over.
Yep. And, as your blog says, conversations can make all the difference, the right conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm very passionate about it. It's a healing for all of us, whether we recognize it or not. So at some point of time in our life, there have been challenges, and some, we may tend to ignore, but it does surface, once in a while. So, we all experience that anxiety at times. But how does it get to a point that it holds us back and, we can realistically overcome it? What are your thoughts on it?
That's an excellent question. And as you said, Kamal, anxiety is there as part of us. It really serves us like an alarm. Imagine you have, the smoke alarm in your house, or a car alarm, or a house alarm. And the real purpose of that alarm is to alert us when there is danger and to help to rally the resources to meet that danger or challenge. But imagine now that this smoke alarm keeps going off every 5 minutes, or that, we've all had an experience where once in a while our car alarm goes off, right? And, what happens then? We rush and, oh, there's nothing, there's no fire here, right? There's no intruder here. And then we try to relax again. And we've all had that experience. And anxiety sometimes is like that. We all have an inbuilt system. It's called the amygdala, but it really is meant to be there to alert us when there is danger, right? So, yeah, you're casually crossing the road, and you see, a car speeding or swerving, and you're able to jump out of the way just in time, right? So, anxiety by itself, in its best form, is that smoke alarm, but it becomes kind of, let's say, wired in a way due to certain experiences. It may be a vulnerability. It may be due to, environmental circumstances, right? We know there are people who live in very, very stressful environments where there are sporadic dangers. And what happens over a period of time is, even when you're removed from that situation or space, your smoke alarm has not been rewired, right? And that's how it actually reaches a point. And we often don't know how to switch it off once it kind of malfunctions. Yeah, how do you get that smoke alarm to stop buzzing? Or how do you get that car alarm to, only go off when there's a real intruder, right? So all these kind of false alarms that come up become very, got it. No problem. Yeah. So as I was mentioning, how does this kind of percolate into our life, and how can we, the first step to overcoming anxiety so that it doesn't overcome us, is to just get present to the fact that this is indeed anxiety, which means these fears, these worries may not actually be really true, right? Um, so, to give an example of that smoke alarm or car alarm in our real life, it could be that, someone has had difficulties, let's say, making friends, or they've been unfortunate to, be in a set of friends who are kind of gaslighting them, or been making fun of them for no particular fault of theirs, right? Like we all have been through some experiences like that. But what can happen is that the nervous system can start generalizing this to say, yeah, all people are dangerous, or I can't trust myself. Like, maybe I'm the one who's dangerous. Maybe I'm going to do or say something that's going to cause other people to not like me or reject me, right? um, Through the pandemic, we actually noticed that there was a surge in social anxiety, because what had happened is we got used to sitting in our cozy and safe homes, right? Um, and even though we wanted to go out there and, really kind of do stuff outside, it's not like it was, all fun. We lost the ability to, yeah, interact with others. And I had a number of students really talk about, how they're dreading going back to the classroom. Yeah, now they're extra self-conscious. They don't know if they're going to say the right thing. So these are all signs of anxiety. And it sometimes, when we don't realize that it's a smoke alarm misfiring, what happens is we start believing it's real. And then we go down that rabbit hole where now suddenly more and more things feel kind of, yeah, you know, trigger that fear or that flight and fight response, which, we've all heard about, or more so cause a freeze response, because I can't flight because that gets me in trouble. I can't run away, and I can't fight because that gets me in trouble. And that compounds the anxiety, because now you've got, you know, an alarm going off, but you can't switch it off. And you don't know if there is a real fire, there isn't. And that's kind of where people get stuck.
Yeah, so what, how do people, or, I would talk about even youngsters, how can they sense that, and where can they stop? When can they alert their own mind and have a shift? Is there, what can they do about it? Like,
Yeah, and that's a great question, because that's really what we want to know. It's not comfortable to be in that constant state of hyper alertness, right? You'll often find that people experience not only constant worrying, they have sleep disturbances, they may have a range of physiological disturbances. You don't feel like eating, you don't feel like maybe even mixing with others, you're always second guessing yourself, right? So um, and I'm glad you brought up youngsters, because actually, in terms of prevalence of anxiety that actually becomes debilitating, what has shown up in the research in Canada is that there is an increase, there is almost a doubling of the prevalence of anxiety disorders in young women. So the age group of 15 to 24 seems to be the group that has kind of risen the most over the past 10 years. Um, and of course, there are lots of reasons. There is, a lot of pressure on young women nowadays. We play dual roles. There is also the deep kind of historical piece, right, where women had sometimes to be really kind of strong to face many of the atrocities that were done on them. So there are deep roots for that. Young men also have quite a high prevalence. Again, nowadays there is a high demand on men overall, but you're right that the prevalence of anxiety in youngsters is something that has really come up. So, how, this group is especially vulnerable because oftentimes they don't realize it's anxiety. To them, the smoke alarm is going off because it is maybe dangerous in their mind to mingle with others. And that's why they go into their gaming. We'll talk about strategies in a moment of overcoming it. But the natural tendency is, we try to somehow distract ourselves from that anxiety or go away from that which causes fear. And then you have all these various kind of maladaptive strategies, which actually, you know, ironically cause more anxiety in the long run, right? So um, the first step really is to, if some area of your life feels stuck, right? Whether it's school, whether it's relationships, and relationships can be friends, can be, close, intimate relationships with parents, and even relationship with yourself, right? If any of those areas, and I often encourage people to maybe just sit down and look at what are the things, important areas of their life. Excuse me. And as they look at the important areas, just look at where are you blocked, where are you inhibited, are you living your fullest self? Are you able to express yourself fully? And wherever you feel you're stuck, whether it's in expressing your creativity, expressing your intelligence, expressing your friendliness, expressing your personality, expressing your spirituality, whatever it may be, that's where you need to look within to see what is this block that I'm facing, right? And oftentimes that block is fear. And, it could be fear of ridicule, rejection, failure, and that's really at the core of anxiety. So every time you encounter a situation where you want to succeed, the smoke alarm goes off because now that's dangerous. There's a fear there. Every time you want to get friendly with somebody, that smoke alarm. Remember what happened last time? I don't know. This could be dangerous, right? So just first getting present to the fact that, yeah, the smoke alarm is going off, but maybe there isn't a fire here, right? I don't even know this person enough to know whether this could be a good friend or not, or I've not even tried to express myself, right? Before I'm already inhibited by this anxiety of ridicule. Okay. Um, and another important piece is really to be attuned to your body. We are all very familiar with the feeling of anxiety. Okay. And we have a particular what we call as a disorder because it's got to a point where a person is really kind of stuck. They're not able to function, to their potential in different areas of life. But that jittery feeling in your stomach, is that something that's going beyond? Is it kind of constant, right? Are you experiencing, other kind of physiological symptoms, sleep disturbances, appetite loss? you know, and are you having excessive worry? Like, do you always tend to think of the worst? When you go into a party, oh, no one's going to like me. Or you go into do a prayer, oh, this is going to be terrible. Or you're taking a course, no, I'm certainly going to fail, right? Um, is your instinctive thought to worry about the worst, right? We call that catastrophizing. So are you always thinking of what could go wrong, how this could, really kind of take a downward spiral? And if that's where your focus is, you already depleted part of your resources, which could be something you could use for your success.
So could you give an example, like not really, not to name a person, anybody with whom you probably must have worked, and what feelings did they convey? Like what were their emotions and what were their responses?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll talk about that, and maybe I'll tag on to that some of the strategies, because that's important too. But let me give you an example, like you said, for someone to be really present to, yeah, you know what? This isn't the real me. This is the anxiety or that smoke alarm, which is malfunctioning, right? There is no fire here. So I'll give you an example of a young man I worked with. Um, and he came in really, people used to call him an introvert. People used to say he's not social friendly. He got comments. He just started a new job, and he got a lot of feedback that um, that he's not making an effort. And, they were judging him and his performance based on that. And as he started talking, he really wasn't an introvert. He really loved people. Like, he really wanted to connect with people. But every time he would want to connect with someone, he would feel the different physiological symptoms. His hands would tremble. He would feel butterflies in his stomach. He would sometimes, because he would ruminate on it, even start having headaches. He would have a parched kind of mouth. So, because of that, over time, he felt oh, people can probably see that I'm anxious, right? People can probably know that my hands trembling. And of course, this, impacted him in so many other ways. Um, so when he came to work with me, this is really where he was. And he was in a space where, yeah, if even I asked him to imagine talking to somebody, I could see the physiological kind of symptoms of anxiety. I could also see that even though he was very articulate when he was talking with me one on one, the moment, I put him into kind of a simulation, he would lose his words, right? Um, and to him, over time, what had happened is because people had labeled him an introvert, he started saying, I'm an introvert. I can't talk to people, right? I just don't know how to talk to people. I'm better off not talking to them. So over time, he had actually begun inhibiting himself from talking to people. And he, to help himself overcome it, as many young people do, he had started getting into smoking, right? And then progressing into weed with a desperate attempt to help him relax, help him focus on his work, because otherwise he would be constantly thinking and worrying about what other people were thinking about him, that, they would be ridiculing him. So he wouldn't speak up in team meetings. He wouldn't express his opinions or thoughts, even though he had wonderful ideas, which he would share with his manager one on one. But he could never do it, you know, with his peers. So he kind of reached this point where, yeah, you know, it just, it was kind of the rock bottom for him, right? And he was almost veering towards depression.
So
So,
what would be your experience, in noticing like who are the most vulnerable experiencing this anxiety? Uh, like one, of course, we were talking about the younger groups, from 15 to 24, maybe anything about gender specific, or, anything else.
yeah, Kamal, I think today, even though, I kind of emphasized that this number had doubled for this group of 15 to 24, and it is, more prevalent or more, it seems to be that women are more vulnerable. Honestly, there's just a multitude of stressors, right? We're just dealing with so much more. There are so many demands on our nervous system that you can almost understand why it's frazzled. But yeah, women do tend to have a little more vulnerability to it due to various factors, right? So it is important to catch yourself young, and where possible, learn at any age. You can learn the strategies, um, and rewire that nervous system, get up to that smoke alarm and set it right.
So what would be the strategies to overcome anxiety? And, like what do you share with people? How do you train them? I know you do EMDR too. So
Yeah.
it's amazing that I don't know much about it, but I have heard good stories.
Yeah. And, there are a lot of good therapeutic strategies. Of course, there is no one size fit all. So, but let me talk about strategies in general, because there are many strategies that you can start with right away. And there are lots of good resources right nowadays. So you can begin the journey today. And of course, it's always helpful, as your conversations talks about, to engage with someone, to talk about someone. What tends to happen when someone is anxious is that there is the additional feeling of shame, right? And then we want to hide that, or we don't want to talk about it. And not talking about it, like I said, it's a vicious cycle. Um, so let me talk about strategies in four categories. Okay. One is at the body level, the physiological level. So what do we typically do when we feel anxious? We try to reach for something that helps us calm down. So some of it is healthy. You might reach for, a warm kind of herbal tea, or, something like that. Um, you might go take a warm shower, you might take a walk, and all of this is helpful. Okay. On the maladaptive side, of course, there are a range of substances that people use, including caffeine, weed, marijuana, and many other substances. Now, it is important to work with the body, but as as we have probably discovered, like you said, all of us have gone through some phase where we were anxious about something, that this works in the short run, right? You might get a nice massage, you might have, something that just helps your nervous system calm down. And to this list, on the healthy side, I would add healthy practices like pranayama, which is basically, different breathing strategies. There is abdominal breathing. There is a wealth of resources if you look for good breathing strategies. um, you can, in this kind of way, in the physical, also add yoga, although yoga by itself is not meant to be a purely physiological practice. If you use it as a physiological practice, it has the similar benefits that exercise or other physical forms of relaxation would have. There are also techniques such as progressive muscular relaxation, um, you know, which typically is tensing and relaxing your muscles. Um, and there is a lot of different kind of strategies out there. There is a lot of what's called as coherent heart coherent breathing, which is again comes from the original pranayam practice, right? So pranayam essentially means an exercise of the life force energy, which is really your breath, right? And it's amazing how effective that can be in reducing anxiety. Um, but as I mentioned, that the physiological aspect is one aspect, right? Like that's the car that, you know, holds that alarm. And it's important to ensure that you service it well. And, that does help with the functioning of the alarm. The second aspect is the emotional self, right? So if we look at ourselves in, as outside of just the physical body, yeah, we are a bunch of thoughts and emotions and behaviors, right? So what do we do at this level? So again, there are different strategies that can help with self-regulation. I do a lot of work with cognitive behavior therapies. EMDR, is also very useful. So there are a number of, there is mindfulness practices, um, which again, are very useful in us, kind of like I talked about earlier, getting present, becoming aware that this is a thought, right? This is an alarm that's set off in my brain. It's not necessarily the whole truth. It's not necessarily the full reality. Everyone isn't looking at me and, ridiculing me, or, um, you know, people are not judging me, as too thin or too fat, whatever, right? So the mindfulness practice is very, very useful in helping us just get present that, just like you may have two friends, and, imagine you're in the center and one person's like, hey, this person's looking at you. Hey, this person is thinking this of you, this person doing that. What would you say to them?
Yeah.
You'd say, shut up. That's, I don't need this, right? Constantly. But we entertain it because it's inside us, because it's our brain, and we almost identify it. And that's almost always how anxiety grows, right? The more we fuel it, and, the more we inhibit ourselves because of those fears, the bigger it grows. Okay. The third group of strategies um, are really around what we call the spiritual or existential strategies, which really means that, you know, how do you really view yourself? Okay. Um, if you look at a very microcosmic perspective, which means that you're only looking at this moment and you're so focused on this moment that you're worried, oh, am I saying the right thing? Am I, Are people understanding what I'm saying? Are people judging me? Okay. Um, or, I mean, anxiety can be even with an object, of course, that, oh my gosh, we have anxiety around germs, we have anxiety around all kinds of stuff. And it's really this kind of existential piece of being super focused on this moment, right? In a way that's negative, in a way that's um, very claustrophobic, rather than looking at yourself and your life from a holistic perspective. So you are more than your fears. You are more than, this particular challenge. You're more than that one negative experience. And it's really about, asking yourself that, yeah, is this really true? Is this really true that because of this one negative experience that all spiders are dangerous? Or is it, because of this one negative experience that no one will want to be friends with me, or I'm not at all capable, or I'm not beautiful, or I'm not wanted, or you're right. So it's really about going beyond that one experience to say, this is a life journey. What happened yesterday or last year was that 2023 model. And what is really true today is this, right? That I am in a new environment, and really kind of grounding yourself in that space where this is a life journey. And that's part of the purpose of your life journey, right? To learn, to gain, to evolve, and to discover and live your purpose.
Yeah,
So
so you say mindfulness here is more comparative, is comparatively closer to spiritualism. Like, what is spiritual being? Like a person, we say, get into the mindfulness practices. Are they about meditation? Are they about spiritualism? Or what does it, how does it express itself, that, inner self as a spiritual person? Or
that's
grounding.
in it.
So I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand this because you mentioned mindfulness too, then you brought it to spiritualism too.
Yep.
What is it,
Yeah. No, and that's an excellent question, because I think mindfulness is something, again, that has kind of been used so broadly, um, like yoga, like pranayam, that oftentimes today when people talk about mindfulness, they aren't necessarily entering that realm of going beyond the physical body, or, the current life, experiences. So mindfulness is much beyond just the mindfulness practice that we are seeing today, right? So mindfulness is a form of meditation, but going beyond just the emotional space or that emotional body that we have, right? To looking at ourselves as, who am I? Who I am, and I often do this with my clients, is I really help them engage in this conversation of who I am is, right? And it's not a static. It's not that you are one rigid kind of being, right? You're constantly evolving. And in this moment, who I am is somebody who is inspiring, or somebody who is growing, or somebody who is caring, or, whatever that may be. So, spirituality, when we actually talk about it, is that journey inward. So, yes, you start with the physical body, you go into the emotional space, the emotional body or the intellectual body, right? Where, yeah, we're analyzing everything. We're kind of trying to really make sense of, yeah, what is this person thinking or doing? Or how do I get the most of this or most of that? But it's in the intellect, right? It's in that engagement with the current situation. And then you go further inward. And as you go further inward, you reach that space where, yeah, what is that meaning and purpose that you're living, right? Um, what is the current life situation mean for you? And what is that you can glean from it? And what is the purpose that you really want to serve, right? Like, yeah, you're here for a much, much bigger purpose than just, impressing that next person or winning that job or, just doing an amazing talk or being, winning a beauty pageant or looking savvy or, so the spirituality, the true spirituality is really about, and for young people, I often say it's just about reaching that space, within where there is a calm reassurance that, you know what, I'm worthy and everything is really as it should be. And I'm open to experience, I'm open to learning and growth. Does that sound practical?
Yes, absolutely. And when do you think a person should reach out to a professional like yourself? Like I'm just curious to know, like, because when a person is going through that phase, um, it's hard to catch
Yes.
yourself that,
Yep.
I need some professional
Yep.
help now. It's going beyond.
Yep. No, absolutely. And again, like I started with the, analogy of that smoke alarm. Yeah, you know, ultimately, yes, it is your smoke alarm, but you don't necessarily know how to switch that off. Or, you might have reached a space where you're so frazzled because that smoke alarm has been ringing for the past so many hours or days or sometimes even years, right? People live with anxiety for years before they think about maybe I should get someone to support me through this journey, right? So I typically say that, like you say with conversation, powerful conversations, the right conversations, healing conversations can give you that toolkit and that can really help you reset that smoke alarm. And once that smoke alarm is reset, now is, when you can go to the next level. So when should you reach out to a professional? The moment that you realize that, okay, this is now reached this point of overwhelm, right? um, Before that, yes, you would engage or really look at, and there is so many resources out there today. um, and some people find that's an easier way to do stuff, right? But when, as and when you try that, and there comes a point where you say, yeah, I've tried the YouTube of how to fix your smoke alarm. Nope, not working. It's giving me a headache. It's costing me a lot of my precious life energy. It's costing me my own ability to be myself, right? Like I gave you the example of the client. He wasn't an introvert. Once he overcame this step by step, he started really being, able to make meaningful relationships, right? And to give his thoughts, which were really accepted. So you have a lot to gain on the other end. And when you know that, yeah, this is something I've tried, right? We all try first to help ourselves, or that you're trying things that are causing more anxiety. Like, okay, I tried something and now the smoke alarm is ringing louder, right? And that's the example I give sometimes of, indulging in a substance. It calms you maybe in the, it seemed to shut down for a moment. I tied cloth around it, but guess what happened? Didn't work, right? So, or it worked partially. That's a good time to engage with a professional. Oftentimes, once you do engage that, I find that people want to go deeper and deeper, right? Yeah, it was never the anxiety, it was just the smoke alarm. Okay. What is deeper is what was causing or what was unwired. And sometimes that leads to trauma. Sometimes that's, leads, to forward thinking. Sometimes that progressively leads to, yeah, discovering your own purpose in life, right? So, yeah, you know, find the right kind of person to hold your hand through it or be your guide or your torchlight. You don't have to go it alone. Okay.
Mm.
Um, one of the things that really helps with anxiety is sometimes just knowing that someone's there for you, right? Someone has your back, or that there is someone who has that safety net if I fall. Okay. And so there are different ways to engage, different professionals to engage with. Like I said, there are different strategies based on which level you want to enter with. Yeah, sometimes you want to start, body. Sometimes you want to start with the emotion. Um, at the least, I would say definitely engage with a mental health professional, maybe a counselor, um, you know. But simultaneously, as you go through this journey, there are a lot of groups that, and you have to try and test, right? Like, not every group is made for everyone. There are a lot of support groups, there are a lot of spiritual groups, there are a lot of youth groups. Like, it's community. There is community out there. So yeah, long story short, engage with a professional just like you would if you needed to learn a guitar, if you wanted to, do anything, and you need someone who has that wisdom and expertise, and someone who can hold that space for you.
So Priya, thank you so much, Dr. Lakshmi Kannan, I should say. It's been a beautiful learning for me in this short time. And how do we connect with you if somebody wants to talk to you about their own story and support? They're seeking for some professional support. How can they reach?
Yeah, so I do work with people with anxiety in a very various number of ways, and you can always go to my website, Powerful Insights Psychologist, and there is a link for contact us. So
Thank you. I look forward to having some more deeper sessions with you, all about stress points and, various issues affecting various groups
yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of gender, age, and, other mental health issues that's, emerge from a simple aspect of, anxiety or anything, like that triggers off some emotional health. So I look forward
absolutely.
to talking to you in the upcoming weeks. Thank you so much, Dr. Kannan.
You're
Bye.
most welcome. And, really, my goal is, empowering minds, empowering lives. And you have a strong mind and a strong spiritual kind of core, all of life becomes a joy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, I look forward to learning from you a lot more. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for doing what you do, Kamal.
Thank you.